set up slightly different things, so I wanted to go ahead and make a video. I've been thinking about this today, actually, because today, for the first time, I got called a mansplainer. I also got called a fool, completely wrong, and how I'm going to live a miserable life for the rest of my days, I guess. Social media is a wonderful thing, for sure. I would hardly imagine somebody saying that to me live, or really to anyone. I mean, you usually don't see that, but hey, that added layer of buffer between one human and another, you get people riled up. So, and the reason that I was thinking about that is, so if you have let me draw a new thing, because I'm trying to figure this out for myself. So this is how I'm gonna figure it out. So let's say you have fact A here and fact B. Usually people don't have a problem taking data A and taking data B and drawing a conclusion. And in that case, C would stand for correct. Usually that's never where the problem is. The problem is why pick data A and why pick data B, right? The problem is in the why. The problem is in your presuppositions. And I don't mean to say by this that other people have that problem, but I don't. We all have this problem, right? So the way to address this, and the way that I'm thinking about that should be addressed, is by understanding the framework, understanding where you are located, okay? So this is, I call this a game because I believe that that word really captures what a lot of frames, a lot of models, a lot of paradigms, a lot of systems, a lot of all those words are nicely captured by a game. So let me give you an example. A game is like the lawyer game. Being a lawyer is a game, and I'm not saying that it's not serious. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that a game is this contained unit, okay? And it's got rules, okay? And everything we think about is a contained unit. And it has to be that way, because if it's not a contained unit, then we have to talk about everything at one time. We can't talk about everything at one time. We got to talk about this thing, whatever it is that we're talking about. So maybe it is a literal game, or maybe it is a profession, or maybe it is a way of thinking, right? And so it's something that you can draw lines and say, this is where the border is, okay? Now, this is how we know that we're talking about one thing or another, because there's a border, right? Now, sometimes it's tricky, and sometimes that's what we have to find out. But usually, if there's a problem inside of the game, inside of the system, inside of the paradigm, inside of the frame of whatever that might be, usually the mistake, let me just say, let's grab a green, the mistake is not inside of the game. The mistake is somewhere in here, okay? And it needs to be fixed, and it needs to be addressed here at this level, okay? So what is this? Well, this is outside of the frame. This is outside of the game, right? But it is where all the presuppositions, all the assumptions, all the givens are located, because that's how we can place a game. That's how we can place a paradigm, okay? So a paradigm is a series of knowledge structures that are a given, and then we build on that. And this is how we have to build any kind of knowledge, any kind of thing that you're thinking about. This is the only way in which we can build it, okay? Now, the problem with that is that we might be trying to address the problem inside of the frame. But the problem is not here. The problem is out here. The problem is in the assumptions, the presuppositions, the things that everybody knows, right? Or that everybody that plays the game knows those things. And the problem with the things that everybody knows is that nobody talks about the things that everybody knows. Because why bother? Except when one of the things that everybody knows happens to be wrong. Okay? So, one of the best examples of this is, I guess I'll talk about two things. One of the best examples of this is Euclidean geometry, and this is the example that I gave in one of my hated posts today. That in geometry, to understand geometry, so I guess I'll do this right now. So geometry would work something like this. And now I'm going to see if I can remember the postulates. But so this is Euclidean geometry. Okay? So geometry has 5 postulates. So this is a great example. I wrote 5 because I was saying 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe 1 is if there's a point, you can always draw a line through a point. There is the other postulate that says all right angles are the same. There's another one that goes if you can draw a line, you can always draw an extension of that line. There's one more that I'm missing. I think it's all triangles, all right triangles are equivalent, right? So they're all the same. And then the last one, which is the one that was contentious for a long time, is if you have a line and you have a point, there's only one line you can draw through that point that will be parallel to the other line, so that they will never meet. Okay, something like that. That's the 5th. Okay, so think about geometry has those 5 rules. Okay, and which those are not that important. The important thing to know is that these rules are what make this work. And so what Euclid is saying is, look, given these 5 rules, accept these rules as true, and then based on that, we can build all the wonderful things in geometry. Okay, so and this was perfectly, and it works. It works as a game. It works very well as a game. If you ever taken geometry and ever gotten good at geometry, you know this works. You can add up all the angles inside of a triangle, and should always add to 180. This is a variation on this on the parallel on the 5th postulate. So it all works, okay? But this is all mounted on a series of presuppositions here. Okay, so you have to kind of take that for granted. Now I'm trying to work this out in my head. I believe that the expression, the rules of a game express the relationship, express the correct relationship between the game and the outside world that is mounted on, given the assumptions. So it's like, so these are the rules of this game for this game to be played correctly, given the game and given the assumptions, and these are the rules because this is the correct way to think about it. And I want you to take that at face value, and if you do, you'll be able to play the game. Okay? Now, that's good when it works, and there are many instances in which it works, right? So for example, Newtonian physics is very much like this. It's got a certain laws, right? The laws of motion, and then from there, everything gets built out. Except when you have something like this inside of the game. Now this works. Inside of the game, an X here, okay? And we call this an anomaly. Okay, it's when something happens inside that doesn't work. In Newtonian physics, for example, it was the fact that the speed of light remained constant no matter what. That seemed to violate everything. It was an anomaly, right? If you were traveling in a train at 80 miles an hour and you lit a flashlight, the speed of light should have been 186,000 miles per second, which is the speed of light, plus the 80 miles an hour that you're traveling. But that's not how it works. Even if you travel backwards or forwards, the speed of light always remains constant. So we were like, what is going on? Okay? That was an anomaly inside of the game, right? But it couldn't be fixed here. It had to be fixed out here. We have to realize that actually this is not the way things work. The way things work is this, right? And that gave birth to beginnings of quantum mechanics. Okay? So it was a fundamental change in the world. It was a fundamental change not in the game, in the presuppositions. So we had to set up new presuppositions and then say, actually, this game is good for these kinds of things, but is not good for these other things. So for that, we are going to invent a new game, all right? And a new game is, quantum mechanics. So game 2. Same thing happened with Euclidean geometry. Non-Euclidean geometry was basically invented. Some historians debate that, but it was basically, or is basically used to describe, for example, lines that are not parallel, even though in Euclidean terms they would be parallel. They meet eventually, right? Because in Einstein's theory of relativity, space is not straight. Space curves, and is curved by forces such as gravity, okay? So what I'm trying to work out is the fact that I believe this is right. I believe that the laws here are related to the presuppositions here. I still haven't nailed down exactly how they're related, but I think it's what I said. The laws of the game are a reflection of the game in relationship to the presuppositions, and they tie both things together. I think that's right. Now, again, the problem is when you have concept A and concept B and you get C and it's correct, it's all good. But when it's not correct, right? Not correct, right? Then you have an anomaly. So, for example, the example that I cited in the hated mansplaining post that I did today was that abortion is clearly not something that can be fixed inside of, and I hate to get this political because people just get very passionate about this, and rightly so, and I've talked about why that is, not that I discovered it or anything like that. So this is the frame of politics, let's say. And then and politics maybe serves a lot of purposes, right? Maybe it does a lot of things, right? And I think it does most things wrong, but that's a different story, right? But it certainly has some things that, man, no matter what it is, no matter how long they take, it doesn't work. Okay, so let's just say these work in politics. Yeah, yep, we get some stuff done, and there is some stuff done. I mean, look, there's a bunch of infrastructure, right? Roads, lights, the AC is working, right? Which in Texas, that's a big deal. There are things that actually kind of work, and so you got to think, wow, that's amazing, right? People are not killing each other. That's good, right? So we can list them here, right? But there are some things that are not here. So, for example, abortion. And the reason that I chose that is not because I have a particular stance or I don't have a particular stance, but because it is an example of something that just keeps coming back. It just keeps coming back. No matter what, different sides, people say this, people say that, and it just keeps coming back. And so, for me, I call that an anomaly. Not because it's an anomaly per se, because like I said, the politic frame, I think it's wrong. I think it's fundamentally wrong, because it should be more a philosophical or even moral frame, but nobody wants to talk about that, so we just kind of go with politics, and then we argue about all these kinds of things endlessly, because actually we're talking about something else. So this is what I mean. In the nested game of politics, let's say in the U.S., there are a series of presuppositions, right? This is why the Declaration of Independence starts with, we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? We think these are our presuppositions. Okay? So, given that fact, you can't fix that here, right? You gotta fix it. You gotta fix it here, right? Which it's not gonna happen. Just letting you know, because we're stuck in the political frame. And as a matter of fact, most things these days get reduced to politics, because I think nobody really wants to talk about the philosophical implications of this stuff, and everybody gets offended very easily. And because it's tricky. I mean, all these things really pulled your heartstrings, because these frames, and I had mentioned this in this video, these frames not only regulate our thoughts about this, these frames regulate our emotions about this, about anything, which is crazy to think about it, but that's why they're inside of a frame, inside of a boundary, so that we can reduce the complexity of something very complicated into something that it's a little more manageable. Now, a really bad frame is when you have, let's say, a political frame that might be ideological. So, an ideological frame, it's something like a box with rules, but the rules only apply to others. Something like that, right? It's like a one-sided frame, right? And it's very rigid. But the good thing about the ideology for the feelings, for the person, is that you can become very secure, right? You can call somebody a mansplainer, like I was called, and then you don't have to contend with anything they have to say, right? It's just boom. And then you can safely dismiss everything, and you can feel morally superior, more intelligent, and without and not let anything that they say disturb you, because you say, okay, so basically an ideology, yeah, this is better. An ideology says, okay, so here are the good. Okay, so I think the good should be blue. So here are the good guys. We are here. Okay, this is an ideology, okay? And here are the bad guys. And they're over there. And these are all the reasons why they're bad, okay? Now, there's nothing on your side that describes your particular condition, right? Because you're right. You don't need to be described at all. The people that need to be really explained away, is these people who are wrong, okay? So this is a particularly dangerous, pathological way of looking at the world, but it reduces the complexity tremendously, so that you don't have to contend with this anomaly. See, there are no anomalies on an ideological frame. Why? Because anything that happens that is not part of the game, you just chalk it up to the bad guys. You say, oh, see, I told you, it's those darn guys over there doing it again, right? And again, you're free, you're calm, you don't need to deal with any issues, you don't have to work it out in your head, right? And it's all good. It's all good. Okay. So this is not helpful at all. All right, because you'll never be able to recruit enough people to an ideology to make this perfect. Because it's tribalizing and it's collectivizing and it's this is not a good recipe, especially if you have a big country and you have various opinions, okay? Well, at the same time, these people tend to say, yeah, well, I accept all opinions except these, right? So again, this is pathological. But let's pretend that we're not in the pathology of it, right? So let me just say here, ideology. Oh, ideology. Sorry about my handwriting. So let's not say we're talking about ideology. We're talking about a semi-healthy game, and one of the reasons that I use the word game is a lot of the writings of Jean Piaget have been very helpful for me, because he really understands. So Jean Piaget is the only person that I know that is he called himself a genetic epistemologist, right? So he's interested in the origins of knowledge. He was interested in where does knowledge come from, right? Very interesting guy, genius of a guy. I mean, crazy genius, right? A lot of his stuff is still not translated from the French, but I have some of his books, and he takes very deep understanding of games, of how children learn to play games. And the reason that he's interested in a lot of child developmental stages, and he's mostly known for that, but he's thinking about how does this stuff come up? Like how is it born? How is it created? Right? How is it coded in DNA, let's say, right? And it's very, very interesting stuff. So I think he's really taught me how to think much better, much more specifically, right? From not just from inside of a frame. Most of the time we are taught to think from inside of a frame, and this is big. And if you think about it, it needs to be this way. It can't be any other way, right? We can't be taught to think about everything at one time. So we are given a frame, and then we're given rules of that frame, and then they teach us, okay, well, this is how it works, this is how that works, this is how that works, which is great if it works. But when it doesn't work, when you have an anomaly, or when you have an error that keeps coming up, right? That's when you know something needs to be changed, but not in the game. Something needs to be changed about the presuppositions that the game is mounted on. Okay? So going back to my example about abortion. Why is abortion not being... Well, probably more of a moral question about whether or not government should regulate human sexuality and human sexual behavior. And if a government should regulate it, how it should regulate it. I mean, it's a freaking crazy hard problem. Very hard problem. Because it's more a problem that is moral. Again, when you have... so Nietzsche really admired the Catholic Church, even though he was a very tough critic of the Catholic Church and really religious thinking as a whole, because he said, look, at least they have rules, and those rules set some boundaries right? And then from those boundaries, we can move forward or backwards. We can start doing stuff. And of course, there's an anomaly, then you have to kind of fix it and update the frame. That's actually how it works. The frames need to have a certain amount of permeability. And not only do they need to have a certain amount of permeability, the frames also, the games, the structures, the paradigms, the systems need to be fed in things. Yeah, this is something I'm working out, because yes, there is a feeding in, and then there's also a feed out of systems. But what is the issue here? I believe, yeah, this is how it works. So the way it works is, yes, the presuppositions is, let's say, a ring out, but then there's another ring out, a bigger ring. And the bigger ring is, so this is the stuff that we're taught. This is the stuff that we don't know. I don't know if it's the stuff that yeah, it's just the stuff that we don't know. That's what it is. So the stuff that we know, the stuff that, and how we structure it, and the laws of the game and everything, the presuppositions that we don't need to talk about because they're givens. This is where the game is mounted on. And then outside of that is all the other stuff. I think that's the right way to think about it. Just all the other stuff. Okay? So every game, every structure, every system, every paradigm, every frame is mounted on this structure. I'm pretty sure this is the way it works. But then when you have a problem that keeps coming up, right? Like politically, abortion is impossible to solve. Impossible. Because it's really talking about, it's questioning the presuppositions. And the presupposition is, well, the presupposition is there's got to be a right or wrong thing about abortion. And maybe there is. But you can't find it out here. You got to go out here. And possibly, and so I'll complete that, but the permeability inside of the game, inside of the, yeah, there's something. So here's another thing. Here's another tip. When it's not clear like this, maybe this is not even the right way to set it up. Because, so what I'm thinking is that there's the permeability. How does that work? I think the permeability inside of a system and inside of the presuppositions and outside to everything else, it's constant. It flows through all three. As a feedback, right? Like it brings it into the game, and it disrupts it or helps it, and also feeds it out, right? So this anomaly, for example, is feeding out that we got to go out of it. We got to go outside of the frame. We got to look at it outside of it. And again, so abortion is not the problem. The problem is, should human sexuality be regulated at all? Right? So you might even ask yourself, should your sexuality be regulated by yourself? And how? And then you realize how difficult that is. Because even though many of us might have certain things that where we say, well, yeah, I think sexually that's okay for me to do, but then there are other things that sexually are not okay for me to do, but maybe I end up doing them anyways, right? That's one thing. Also, you might think, well, I wouldn't do it myself, but if somebody else does it, I don't have no problem, right? Okay, well, I wouldn't do it myself, but, well, I wouldn't want my children to do it either. You know, so it just becomes, and again, this is a very, very hard problem. So no wonder why we're not fixing it, because it's even harder to go outside. But anyways, my job is not to solve this problem right now, because it's not going to happen, right? But my job is, or my thinking here is that every time, every time we have an anomaly, so for example, an anomaly is an argument, right? Argument. So, okay, well this justifies that I make a new one. Let me make the last one. The last little graph here, because this is getting long, but it's really helped me clarify a lot of stuff. Hopefully it's coming across semi-clear. So this frame is a favorite of all of us. It's a relationship. Okay? So our relationship, it's like this joint contract. Okay, and it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. It could be an employee, boss relationship. It could be a friendship. It could be any number, a supplier and vendor relationship. I mean, it could be anything, right? But let's just say a relationship between two individuals. Okay, and this relationship between these two individuals has these rules. Okay, and these rules and the game, which is the relationship, is supported by the presuppositions, right? So in the case of, let's say, marriage or intimate relationship, the presuppositions might be something like people need a relationship, or people need somebody to be with, right? That could be one, right? At some point, the presuppositions were, well, a man needs to be with a woman, right? Now it's been changing, right? And now it's kind of not so straightforward, right? Because you have that feedback from out and in, right? But then you still have, I'm not gonna get into that. I'm gonna get into this. So let's say there's an argument, okay? And an argument between the two individuals, that is an anomaly, okay? So person A or person B might say, well, the problem is this frame is the relationship, right? But the problem, especially if it's something that keeps coming back, might be out here, right? Might be in the presuppositions, might even be in the unknown, right? Let me use the orange for the next circle out. And I think I feel like there's a better way to conceptualize this, to draw it. If you have an idea, let me know. Basically, there's I guess you could do 3 circles, or 3 squares, concentric circles. Yeah, that could be. I think that would work. But the problem then is out here. You gotta solve it out here. But the argument is the clue to update the structure, okay? And the structure might need a new rule. The structure might need to take one rule out, right? And like in a small scale, right? But the problem is when the whole frame needs to update one of the presuppositions outside, right? Because the problem is here, right? So now it gets trickier, right? But that anomaly is what clues you in. So in my hated post of mansplaining, there was a setup, there was a frame, right? The frame was a particular statement, right? And what was called my man logic, which I really took offense at that. I think it was the most offensive thing they could have said to me, man logic, because I just think that's an attack at logic itself, at intellect. There's no such thing as a man logic. I know what they're trying to say. I'm not saying that I don't know what they're trying to say, but logic, we need to find a ground. And what is the ground if not logic, or at least a ground that could be, right? Experience is also a ground. I'm not dismissing that, and I think everybody should feel free to express their own experience. But then somebody else needs to be free to say, hey, I will question your experience, and then we have a discussion. We have an argument, we have a discussion, and then we can figure out if we need to update something inside of our frame, inside of what we set up, or inside of the presuppositions that are around it, which is especially if the argument keeps coming back, that anomaly just doesn't seem to go away, is a wrinkle you can't seem to get out of the shirt. So you got to go out, and then maybe sometimes I imagine that sometimes you actually have to go out to the, let's say, the unknown, to all the other stuff, to try to bring something into the frame that works, or that makes the wrong right, or at least better. Okay, so I think this is the way it works. So here's the summary. Here's the why this is important. This is important because when there's a problem inside of a frame, inside of a game that you're playing, whether it's your business, whether it's, and again, the reason that this applies at all these different levels of analysis, from the personal to the business to a marketing campaign to a marketing analysis, is because it's strategic, and strategy, it concerns itself with the big picture, right? Everything below that is tactical or technical, or tool-like. Now you need all those levels, and you'll eventually get there. But anyways, this is the reason why this applies to all these different things. So when there's an argument, when there's a disagreement, when there is a rub, when there is an anomaly inside of a frame, instead of questioning the other person and wrong and any label that you just think of a label, right? You're a misogynist, or you are a racist, and I'm not saying those people don't exist. That's not what I'm saying. But if you actually care about the issue that you're working out, you don't want to do this to anybody, even if they're dead wrong, right? So today I was completely wrong. I was a fool. I didn't know what I was talking about. Great. Teach me how I am wrong. Give me some arguments and let's have a conversation. Give me something, like hit my ideas with your ideas, and let's figure out together, this is my thesis and what is your antithesis. So maybe we have a synthesis that is better, that is more updated, that maybe the whole frame needs to be reworked. But by saying, look, I am right, I am good, right? And oh yeah, this is perfect. And you are bad, right? And then anything that happens inside of the frame that you do, or that really, or even that I do, but that is an anomaly and is wrong, is caused because of you. You. Bad you, right? So in this frame, all you have to do, the logical conclusion is, well, I just kill you, right? Or I eliminate you, or I erase you from my life, because by definition that will get rid of that, right? Except that most of the times it doesn't, because this is ideological, right? The anomalies could happen inside of the whole frame, right? So that person will probably end up encountering another person who maybe is like that, and now the anomaly will happen again, and you go, oh, you're another one of those. Another reason why I don't like the posts that people are sharing these days about toxic personalities and toxic people, right? It says, and don't get me wrong, I know what they mean when they say a toxic person. I've encountered many people who are, in the victim mode, and I was a victim for a very long time, or acted like a victim. And I had a really good story of a victim. and I actually play a very convincing victim. But it wasn't helpful, right? But I've done that. I've also been in situations where I'm dealing with people who complain all the time, who blame other people for stuff. So I know what they mean. But here's my problem. My problem is that by saying, okay, so remove those toxic people out of your life. Okay, so where are the toxic people? Where? They're over there? Okay, well, let's stay away from over there. Let's stay over here. Right? This sounds like this, right? When in reality, the way this really works is this is a human right here. I'm gonna draw a human. So it's like this. This is a human right here. Right? And to make it even graphic and funny, kind of. I mean, I'm trying to be funny. Right? So that's a human, right? To paraphrase Alexander Solzhenitsyn, right? The line between dividing good and evil runs through every man and woman's heart. We all have sides of that. So when they say, well, remove the toxic people from your life, how about removing parts of yourself that are toxic? Wouldn't that be good? That's a good start, but it's freaking hard, very hard, right? Because all of us have traumas, all of us have problems, all of us have hidden agendas, even hidden to ourselves. So who are we to sit in a chair and say, "Ooh, look at those toxic people, I'm going to remove them from my life"? Like, you know. So again, this is ideological. When you say, "Well, you see all the Democrats over there, get rid of them," right? Or you see all the Republicans, get rid of them, or all the people who like this or who like that, or all the, you know, it's not helpful, not helpful at all. So instead of thinking, okay, so there's an anomaly. And the anomaly is this person's fault, or it's the corporation's fault, or is the employer's fault, or is most men, as it said in the post, or the same goes for most women. That's also obviously not true, right? It's like saying most children. That's ridiculous, right? We're in this together. It's like saying, well, you know, it's most cars. The problem that there are traffic accidents is because most, and you see this in social media all the time, people say, man, most people don't know how to drive. And I've always heard people say that. You know what I've never heard? I've never heard anybody say, hey, I'm one of those people that can't drive. Where are those people? It's like nobody ever talks about that part. So anyways, so anytime there's an anomaly being a mistake, an anomaly being an argument, an anomaly being a rub, a friction, some kind of, instead of chalking it to somebody and putting them inside of the frame, saying, okay, treat the anomaly, not the person, the anomaly, the mistake, the thing that you're arguing. Let's talk about that, and let's figure out if this is inside of the game, or if it's a second and third order consequence of the presuppositions, where the game is set up, where our relationship is set up, where our business is set up, or whether it's a problem that we need to go out into the bigger world of the stuff that we don't know what's going to happen, to bring something to fix that. And so in that sense, the anomaly, the mistake, it's a good feedback mechanism. It's a feedback mechanism. It's like it's something that calls to your attention, that says, look, think about this, right? When the speed of light didn't change, no matter what, most physicists, they wanted to keep the frame intact, so they said, well, that's a small thing. It's not don't worry about it. Don't even think about that. Right? There's another thing that's, for example, it's been kind of talked about by some people in biology, called symbiogenesis. And symbiogenesis, basically, it's I I don't know, should I go on this rant, but it's basically the crossbreeding of previously thought of different species that actually have interactions between the two. So it's not really a tree anymore. And so a lot of evolutionary biologists are saying, look, let's not talk about that, because this is going to basically destroy everything that we've built. Well, I don't know what to tell you. It's there, it's an anomaly. So the anomaly, like a pain on your side, right? You wake up in the morning and you go, oh, I have a pain, right? And if it's strong enough and if it doesn't go away, you should probably go to the doctor, because it might be pancreatic cancer, which is one of the worst cancers that you can get. It's like, you'll live for a month or maybe 3 months, right? But maybe it's just because you slept wrong, or you woke up or maybe you were working out or whatever, right? So but you don't know. So so instead of getting offended, instead of running away, and this is hard, because the frame again regulates your emotions. So since the frame regulates your emotions, you're not going to want to go away. You're not going to want to move or change the frame, because it's going to disrupt the way you feel, obviously, because the frame is there to give you stability, to give you some ground, even if it's a terrible frame, right? Like some people, some of us, I'll include myself, are very messed up emotionally. So we create these frames around us, let's say in our relationships, that are completely unhealthy, because at least we know the rules to the unhealthy frame, to the unhealthy game. Man, I know how to play a dysfunctional family really well. Man, I excel at that, right? But when we meet somebody that maybe is a little more normal, and they say, look, there's this other rules, and actually, because my presuppositions are different than yours, because maybe I grew up in a healthier family, then that's going to disrupt the whole game, and that's going to create a lot of errors and mistakes and anomalies, right? And if we're ideological, we say, it's your fault. If I just found a better woman, everything will be fine, right? Everything will be good. Of course, if you start having a lot of relationships and you don't ever find anybody, then you're going to have to question that. Maybe it's you, right? But this is what happens, and especially the more intimate, the harder it is to mess with the frame, because it is more foundational to our own feelings of stability, and will kick up anxiety like crazy. So, anyways, this is what I'm working on, and I've been thinking about this because I got called a lot of names. But then I thought, okay, there's an anomaly here, and I want to work on this. Do we need an updated frame, or in my argument, my mansplaining argument was that, look, you're addressing. I think it was an anomaly addressed in a tiny little part of inside of a bigger game. And so what I said, look, let's put this in context of the whole thing. If our desire is to actually fix it, let's do that. Of course, if your desire is just to complain and to show the world how you are a victim, or how you are more righteous because you're putting up with all this crap from the world, and how. Well, and then there's some pleasure to be had there. I've done it. And again, I don't blame anybody for doing it, right? But then, if I exist in that same frame, I'm gonna be like, and this is what I did. I said, hey, give me more information about that. Tell me more about this. What about that? What do you mean by this? Define this word for me. Because my presupposition was, well, let's try to fix it. Let's make it better. How do we make it better, right? But no, everybody inside that frame said, look, all these anomalies are all these bad people. By the way, you're one of those bad people, and we don't want to see you, right? The lady literally told me, I want you to be quiet. That's what she said. I want you to be quiet. Which, actually, she said other things, and that was probably the most offensive thing you could ever say to somebody, right? I don't want you to express yourself, right? That's very dangerous. You don't ever want to get to that place, because then you don't see the anomalies. You don't see the mistakes, and then you can't update the frame. You can't update your game, and then your game will implode and destroy and be destroyed. And you don't want that. All right, let's see how this test works out.